This video demonstrates the use of and navigation through a D.A.W. in the domain in which an audio engineer would use it. A D.A.W. or Digital Audio Workstation is a software studio that enables a computer to behave like a recording studio, taking the analog signal from a preamp and converting it to digital using an analog to digital converter or sampler allows us to store analog voltages as binary code on a computer's hard disk. The digital audio can then be edited and processed in the D.A.W, which is often made to look like a studio schematic might look. The digital audio converters are situated in the interface, and in this instance the D.A.W is ProTools and the interface is an Avid HDIO Omni. The quality of our digital audio is directly related to the bit depth and sample rate used during the conversion process as explained in Outcome 1, and the interface to which we're using today is capable of sampling up to 192 kHz. We are using ProTools 10 HDX, the difference from normal Pro Tools being that the system employs the use of a card installed in the computer, which allows Pro Tools to take much of the processing burden off of the computer's hardware. All the parameters dictating how the two sources of processing power work together are available inside of Pro Tools, and the following video shows some of the important ones. So I'm opening up my Pro Tools session now, and it's just loading my DEA and my plugins. So now that Pro Tools is opened, I need to click it again on this computer and start a session. So I'll click File, New Session. I'm creating a blank session, and I'm going to sample it at 24-bit. 16-bit would be what I end up bouncing down to if it was for a CD, to improve the quality of the way the plugins work, the sound quality. I'm going to go with 24-bit. I've also got the option of 32-bit floating point. It gives me much more options after. If I was to be using 32-bit floating point and I was to be clipping, it's not actually saved on the audio file, I can sort it later. I've got my sample rate, which goes all the way up to 192 kHz, and I'm going to use this at 48 kHz. And now I get to my blank screen. Since our audio files are on another disk, what I'm going to actually do is go File, Import Session Data, and I'm going to go to my hard drive, Imagination Final with drums, and then the most recent one, 23rd of the 5th, PTX Pro Tools 10 file. Now what I do is I select the tracks that I would like to import. So I'm actually going to select them all. So I just click the first one here, scroll down to the bottom, hold Shift, click them, and they're all going to be added as new tracks. Import. Okay, and it'll load that up now, and we see them all be added on the left here to my tracks, and we see them all come up in my regions here. And the computer is just linking the files just now to the task manager. We can see everything that's happening in the background of Pro Tools. If I want to apply processing, I've got my inserts showing here, and I can add an insert just by clicking it on this window or by Command plus. I've got the same options just here, but I'm going to work in the edit window for now. What I do is insert here, and I've got two options. I can use the computer processor by using a native plugin, which just means the plugin's the same, but all the work's being done in the computer's CPU. Because I've got the option to use the HDX card, my DSP plugins, I can take the pressure off the computer CPU and use the CPU on the HDX card, which is in the back of the computer, as again showed in the slideshow before. So if I wanted to put a gate on this kick drum, what I do here is I just select a gate. We're not here to talk about how gates work, so I'll skip past this. And the same would apply if I wanted to apply equalization, compression, insert a reverb onto a auxiliary track, and all my delays and others. The audio suite applies plugins differently. The audio suite is non-reversible in a way. What it does is it applies an effect to a particular part of a region rather than having it on a track or inserted where it can easily be removed. You can reverse what you've done by Control Z-ing it or edit undo, but it does actually change the file, whereas the other processes make a duplicate that you don't see, that runs in the background. So if I was to select a piece of audio, now I can go to Audio Suite, and say I wanted to apply an EQ, I could just render the equalization for this one particular bit onto the bit I've selected, and it would be permanent, even though I could undo it, but the rest of the track would play without the EQ. When it got to there, it would switch over. If I wanted to invert it or reverse it, I've got the option as well, and they're all work the same. You click the one you want to do, and all you need to do is select your parameters. Invert is basically doing one thing, so there aren't much parameters, and all I do is render, and you see it breaks it off and it renders that part only, and then I can just edit, undo, invert. At the end of my session, when it comes to bouncing out, I've got many options. I can bounce out from any bus or output, but for the purpose of this I would obviously be bouncing out from stereo left and right. I've got bounce to MP3 if I wanted to compress it. If I was doing a session and I wanted to send people demos over the internet just for people to maybe rehearse bits, this could be a dry take or a scratch track, MP3 would be useful for that. But for to keep the quality, the majority of the time I'm going to be using WAVs. They're 10 times the size, they're 10 times the information. If it was going on a CD, I would change that to 44.1 and 16-bit. So if we go Setup and click on Hardware, we see our average Omni interface situated in the machine room. In older versions of Pro Tools, we would have been tied to this interface, and it was not actually possible to use the interfaces of different manufacturers. I think Focusrite have got one, but in the new version of Pro Tools, it's all interchangeable. You can use any manufacturer's interface with the setup, so they are getting a lot better. A lot of the other versions, the MP versions of Pro Tools and the LE, have got a lot of cutbacks, but in the new versions, it's all been opened up, so you can mix and match hardware, and it makes it much more customizable. Let's take a look at the playback engine. Since we're not tracking, we can use 24 samples as a buffer. This takes a lot of the work off the CPU. Our delay compensation is just compensating for the delays of going through all the plugins and anything else that might add latency. The cache size is just how much memory we can dedicate to the RAM, how much is coming out from random access memory. Another useful section of Pro Tools is our in and out section. This just controls the physical outputs on inputs and outputs on the Avid interface or whatever interface is connected, and then this screen you can route to anywhere you would like it to be in Pro Tools. So it's currently ergonomically going 1 2 to 1 and 2, 3 4 to 3 and 4, but you can actually customize this to any route that you would like. In this session, I've created some mix buses. I've got a bus for all my guitars, a bus for my vocals, which includes my lead vocal and my harmonies, and I have got a bus for my drums as well. I don't want the drums to be changing volume, so I've not got them sidechained to the vocals. However, I do have the guitar bus sidechained to the vocals. So what I have done is taken a bus from my vocals, fully sending to bus 100. Then I have a compressor of my guitar bus set to a sidechain over here, and the key input for that sidechain is bus 100. And what we can see here is the compressor only working when the vocals are in play. Vocal stop, and then it comes back on. It's an analog technique. Again, available now in the digital world, as is everything else. So I've left myself some headroom for mastering later, but on the master fader here I've given it some EQ and also kind of bring it up a bit. But I will then import that bounced file into a new session and do my proper mastering And that file is available on the DVD with the rest of this session and the Cubase session, also including audio sent through Rewire, and that WAV file will be called Imagination.